With all due respect, though, I would ask, like, didn't Canadians want you to be pragmatic 6 months ago or a year ago? Is this just a naked political decision to remove this issue as a point of cleavage between the Conservatives and yourself?
I would say the world has changed. Let's not forget, I mean...
About a carbon tax?
Well,
Vassy Kapelos spoke with Mark Carney's new finance minister, François-Philippe Champagne, about repealing the carbon tax. Champagne responded when asked why they removed it by saying that it was because of Donald Trump.
Let's take a look.
Hi, Minister. It's a pleasure to see you again, and congratulations on your new portfolio.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
A new era of fiscal responsibility in the country.
I'm glad that you're bringing that up because I have a number of questions about what exactly that means. But I want to start off on the premise of your government now backing away from the carbon tax. You stood alongside former Prime Minister Trudeau for years in cabinet as a parliamentary secretary defending the premise behind the carbon tax. Why should Canadians believe you now that you're really, really not going to use it?
Well, you know, the Prime Minister signed an order today. You've seen that. But I would say the worst thing we could do is not to change our approach when the world is changing. The world has changed massively in the last 6 weeks. I mean, you've seen our closest ally and partner turn its back on us. Geopolitics is changing. So in line of the change in the world, I think Canadians expect us to be pragmatic. You know, you look at what you were doing. We're still very committed to do a number of things for climate change. I still believe this is really the issue of our generation, of our lifetime. But at the same time, there's different ways to do things. I think the Prime Minister spoke during the campaign, and today he signed an order. But I would say it's just a reflection of how we have to adapt to a fast-changing world. People at home understand how things have changed in 6 weeks. It's almost unprecedented. So we're pragmatic. We're changing our approach. We still focus on reducing carbon, but at the same time, we're taking a different approach.
So before this last 6 weeks, the carbon tax was still flying. That's what he said. Right.
The mental gymnastics are just, I guess they deserve a gold medal, don't they?
Well, yeah, you never try and compete with a Liberal cabinet minister when it comes to mental gymnastics because they are world champions at that. This is just a bunch of crap. And I really hope they continue using this type of talking point because I'm pretty sure the average Canadian is going to say, whoa, wait a minute. You've been shoving this down our throat for 7 years.
Right, about how much this carbon tax is going to help the environment. And, you know, the Conservatives have been calling it, what was the term that they were using for it? It wasn't a environmental solution, it was a tax solution.
It's not an environmental plan, it's a tax plan.
It's a tax plan, that's right. And they were 100% right. Because if it's helping the environment so much, why are they getting rid of it? Oh, I know. It's because it's making Canadians miserable. It's not actually helping the environment. And an election's coming very, very soon.
Well, it's funny. They accuse Pierre of, quote unquote, pandering to people. But isn't this, quote unquote, pandering to Canadians?
Oh, of course it is. And they're doing it just so that they can get your vote, get into power again, and do whatever they want.
With all due respect, though, I would ask, like, didn't Canadians want you to be pragmatic 6 months ago or a year ago? Is this just a naked political decision to remove this issue as a point of cleavage between the Conservatives and yourself?
Yes. Yes to all those things that Vassy just said.
Or get him. Get the Chihuahua. This is exactly what it is. And I'm, you know, it's great to see at least one person in mainstream media go after the Liberals at this point because they have been taking care of them like kid gloves and giving them all this airtime.
Well, and that's because the Liberal government has been subsidizing the mainstream media. Like, I don't even know to the tune of how much. I know that for sure the CBC's been getting $1.4 billion. And I think the other media outlets are divvying up, what was it, $750 million? That's almost that's over $2 billion of Canadians' taxpayer money. Why would the mainstream media bite the hand that feeds them?
I would say the world has changed. Let's not forget, I mean...
About a carbon tax?
Well, I'd say the world in general. I mean, 6 weeks in this world has seen unprecedented position taken by one of the superpowers, which happens to be our closest ally and neighbor.
Oh, okay. So it's geopolitics that has caused us to repeal the carbon tax.
None of this makes sense. Canada only produces about, 1.5% of the world's carbon, and the United States, China, and India are the mass producers. They don't have carbon plans. So why is the Canadian government punishing Canadians? And why have they decided all of a sudden, now that there's an election coming, oh, you know what, we're not going to do that anymore? I wonder.
Well, and interesting how they're going to only pause it for 60 days.
And that's the other thing.
So if you're not going to have an election within that 60 days, why are you pausing it for 60 days? Just saying.
Because there's going to be an election very soon from what we've been hearing.
So, but anyhow, let's just unpack this a bit. Okay, so because Donald Trump decided to put tariffs on Canada, we had to take the carbon tax off. This is the gaslighting that's going on now. And this is going to get worse, folks, because then what they're going to say is, oh, Canada has an affordability crisis, not because of the last 10 years of a failed Liberal government, but because of Donald Trump.
Well, here, let's follow this train of thought to conclusion. So Champagne is saying we had to take the carbon tax off because Donald Trump is putting tariffs on Canada. So tariffs on Canada hurt our economy. We're taking off the carbon tax because that also hurts our economy, and we're imposing this hurt on our economy on ourselves. Do we hear how ridiculous this sounds when we reduce it to absurdity?
Well, especially when for the last 7 years, all we've heard from the Liberals is the carbon tax puts more money back in your pocket. So why would they be removing something that puts more money back in your pocket during a time of extra financial hardship?
In the entire history of humanity, have you ever heard of a tax that puts more money back into the citizens' pockets? No, taxes are designed to do one thing only, is to take money from the citizens and put it into the pockets of the ruling class.
Which is really reshaping the world order like we have not seen in our lifetime. So in light of these changing environment, you really have to see, how do you maintain competitiveness in Canada? How do you respond to the concern about affordability that Canadians have put?
But shouldn't you have been doing that before?
Well, I would say the last 6 weeks is really, I know you would keep asking me that, but I would just say, look around the world. 6 weeks. 6 weeks has changed the world significantly. And I would say in that context, I think folks at home would understand that the worst we could do is not to acknowledge that the world is changing and just say, well, because we decided one day to do this, we're not going to change. No, I think to be clever is to look and say, well, the world is changing. We have to adapt, keeping with our value about, protecting climate and making sure that we have policies to reduce carbon emission. But at the same time, also understanding that now is the time to act to support Canadians.
So, ladies and gentlemen, what he's saying is things have only gotten tough for Canada in the last 6 weeks. Canada was just tickety-boo before that.
Well, these guys live in these ivory towers and they do not know what the struggle is like for the average Canadian. So of course they would think that. Of course, things only got tough for the Liberal elite when Donald Trump took over.
I think they do know darn well, because this is why they're saying 6 weeks. They don't want you to remember what happened in 2024 and in 2023 and in 2022 and in 2021 and 2020 and all the other years. They don't want you to remember all that. What they want you to pay attention is, ladies and gentlemen, all of your hardships in life are caused by one person and one person only, and that's Donald Trump. And by the way, this Pierre guy, he's almost exactly like him, so you better be careful about him too.
Speaking of change in different framing, you mentioned you started off, you're the finance minister now, you talked about fiscal responsibility. And I'm hoping that you can help me understand the math, because during the leadership campaign, Prime Minister Carney talked about maintaining transfers to individuals and provinces, keeping dental care, pharmacare, child care, accelerating defense spending, yet somehow balancing the budget in a three-year time frame. How does that add up? And what are you going to cut to get there?
We're going to do things differently. Like I said, it's a new era of fiscal responsibility. This is a completely new era in Canada. We have been clear, we're going to spend less, we're going to invest more.
Okay. So I take from Champagne that before this, they weren't being fiscally responsible.
Well, I mean, we know that, but he's saying the quiet part out loud.
But folks, in an effort to try to distance themselves from the previous government that they themselves were a part of, they are now criticizing that previous government and saying it wasn't fiscally responsible. While at the same time, the new allegedly fiscally responsible prime minister was the one advising them for 5 years during this fiscally irresponsible period.
Again, reduce it to absurdity, and it doesn't make sense.
We're going to build Canada of tomorrow. There's nothing that you will see that will surprise Canadians that at a time like that, we need to invest massively in ourselves, in our industries, in our defense, in our industries across the nation and workers. So we're going to say there's a difference between spending and investment. So that's going to be the first frame we're going to present to Canadians, that, for example, when you have structural investment that are going to make our country more competitive, we're going to present a financial statement, if you want, where you will see the spending and the investments. And I think folks at home understand, when you go to the grocery and buy, you're spending. When you invest in a house, when you buy a house, you're investing.
It's still a debt load to me, though. Both of those things weigh on my debt load.
One is that you're buying an asset that is going to be there for generation. I'll give you an example. When we have the high-frequency rail now, or the high-speed rail, well, that's an asset we're going to have for at least 100 years, if not beyond, like when we built this railway across Canada. So now is the time to invest in ourselves. If our largest trading partner is turning its back on us, we're gonna invest in our industry. We're gonna use the money to rebuild our military, but we're gonna do that with Canadian workers and Canadian industry. There's nothing that we cannot do for ourselves that someone can take away from us. And I think this is going to be a new paradigm for Canadians to see that we're going to insist, for example, that people use Canadian steel, Canadian aluminum, that we're going to use our dollar to really support Canadian industry at a time where we've never seen a challenge, I would say, of that magnitude.
Okay, so there's a bunch there. Number one, he's trying to position that separating the budget into expenditures and capital assets, that this is a new thing. Remember when Francois Philippe Champagne tried to suggest that flyers were a new thing around Thanksgiving?
Yeah, that was
bad.
That was cringe.
That was pretty bad. This is on the same level. And because, again, worked in government, every government agency, every private corporation in Canada, every public corporation in Canada manages their budget in terms of operational expense and capital asset. This is not a new thing.
No.
All they're trying to do here is say, look, we've balanced the operational budget, but we're spending a deficit on capital. We already track that in the federal budget. The difference is when we say a balanced budget, or when the Conservatives say a balanced budget, when it comes to the federal budget, they mean a balanced budget, both operational and CapEx. Why?
Across the board.
Because borrowing is borrowing. It doesn't matter. If you're borrowing to fund your operational expense or if you're borrowing to fund your capital expense, it's the same thing.
Well, it's like, could you imagine having a corporation explain to its shareholders that, look, we've balanced our CapEx, but over here on our OpEx, we're, I don't know, $20 billion in the hole. What do you think the shareholders will say? They will be livid because overall that budget is $20 billion in the hole.
Well, and all we've been hearing from the Liberals for the last 10 years, you remember these phrases? Well, we're investing in dental care. We're investing in Canadians. And we're going to run 3 small deficits and invest in Canadians. And then the budget will balance itself. All we've been hearing from Liberals is there's all this investment. Well, where's that investment gone? Where's all the return on that investment that you said that we were going to get? Oh, right. You've been spending it on things like Sex Work the Musical and other garbage programs like that. And this is the result. And you literally spend millions of dollars for consultants to come in to tell you this is how much you should be spending and paying yourselves. This is the type of craziness that has been going on with this Liberal government. But no, now, 10 years later, it's time to be fiscally responsible. Are you kidding me? Are you seriously kidding me? This is what you want Canadians to believe.
Well, they've been running around like kids in a candy store for the past 10 years, and now they're going to smarten up and grow up and actually treat our tax dollars with respect. What's changing? Oh, right, the election.
Now, here's one really important thing that Champagne said that should be very concerning. So, back when Mark Carney was launching his campaign, we talked a little about his ideology and what was in his book. And one of the things that was concerning was the fact that, he kind of refers to himself as a technocrat. And he believes that government should be controlling what people are buying in order to be environmentally conscious. So one of the things that he suggests in his book is the things that are more pollution oriented, the government wants to make that so expensive that you can't afford to buy it. So then what do you need to buy? You need to buy what the government wants you to buy. So when Francois Philippe Champagne said right there that this is going to be a, quote, new paradigm shift, and that we're going to be insisting that Canadians buy Canadian steel and Canadian products and all these other things, what does insist mean, Champagne? Does that mean by law you're going to prevent people from literally participating in the free market? If there's something cheaper, you're not going to let them buy it?
No, they're going to artificially inflate the price or outright make it illegal. I mean, look at plastic straws in this country. I was having a conversation on Facebook with an American, and I said, those are outlawed in my country. And they're like, what country do you live in? I said, Canada. Because you cannot get plastic straws in this country anymore. It's ridiculous. You can't even get plastic analogous straws in this country because the Liberals had made it illegal for companies to try to innovate and make straws out of things that were not plastic but behaved like plastic.
So I don't care if you vote NDP, if you vote Liberal, if you don't vote Conservatives or whatever, but look at the carbon tax tariffs or the carbon border adjustment that Mark Carney says he's going to implement. This is what we're talking about when we say the government is going to make everything else more expensive to mandate what you buy. So get ready for your iPhones to go up in price because of tariffs. Get ready for Androids to go up in price because of tariffs. All of your computer equipment is going to go up in price. All of your electronics are going to go up in price. Most likely, you're going to have even more money paying for all of your subscriptions for Netflix and Disney and the rest of it because it's coming over the border. So they're going to justify a border adjustment on that. So everything that comes across the border that we don't make here in Canada, and right now it's a lot, you're going to be paying that much more for it. This is what you have in store when you have a net zero climate fanatic at the head of the country. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Mark Carney, this is Francois Philippe Champagne, and this is the risk if we all don't get involved in the next election and make sure, not just hope, but make sure we have a change in government.